boy.
Don't
It's a
break
fucking
stuff.
It's a fucking mess.
Don't break anything.
Christ. All right. Well,
I mean, to be fair, these tables, the tray tables aren't necessarily well balanced.
I mean, they're not meant to be.
They're not.
They're TV dinner trays. Like, let's be completely fair with what they are.
We have,
you know,
beverages on them.
Anyway, welcome to the Dungeon Bros podcast. This is episode 12.
Yeah, 12.
We're making a dozen podcasts
We've made
already.
a dozen. This is 6 months in.
It feels like it has not been nearly as long as 6 months.
I mean,
It's very exciting.
this is not a huge ask for us. We just enjoy sitting down and talking D&D in general.
Yeah, I mean, we would be doing this anyway. We just wouldn't have a phone pointed at us and microphones in front of our face. And in this instance, lights. We've purchased some lights.
New lights. There's red on this back wall for those of you who are viewing it via the podcast services around the world.
You won't be able to see it in the podcast services.
I mean, you can watch it on your phone while the podcast is playing.
Yeah, it's a damn shame. The podcast services around the world, around the globe.
Mm-hmm.
Christ, I can't speak today.
That's okay.
Now, we're going to be talking about Call of the Netherdeep in our main topic of discussion today, as I'm sure you're aware from clicking on this podcast, as it's going to be in the title. Mm-hmm. We got some pretty decently good news items to get to today. We've got a fair few.
6 items, as far as I see.
These are all quite juicy, but first things first, we are TikTok creators.
We are.
And we get comments on our TikToks a lot.
We do.
And one in particular recently kind of... it rustled my jimmies, and not in like the best way, but not in a bad way per se. You know what I mean?
I mean, it moved you enough to send your linguistics back to 2012.
Yes. So we received a comment along the lines of, "Hey, I need a BBEG. Any ideas? Need help?" And within moments, someone replied, "Harvey Weinstein Barbarian." Which in concept is amazing. Horrible. Very bad guy. But the fact that that was something that was typed into the world, I feel like we should be proud of providing the platform for that to be written.
Yes, and now we have broadcast it.
And now we've broadcast it, and we've spread the great
37
word.
people who may listen to this episode.
Now, Harvey Weinstein, known rapist of people, and we should not applaud that in any way. Harvey Weinstein is a terrible person. When it comes to D&D villains, though, I don't know. I'm not going to speak for you or the show. For me, I feel like most forms of villainy, pretty much all forms of villainy, should not be off limits at the D&D table, with the asterisk, very important asterisk, that your players affirmatively consent to it, not passively by like, whatever, we can do whatever, but like affirmatively agree to whatever situation you're presenting, and being proactive about sensitive topics that could affect someone that you may not know is a very good thing to be. For example, my long-running D&D group, we've got like 36 sessions under our belt, which is a lot, consecutively, of the same story in the same world with the same characters. We were about like 15, 20 sessions in, and it wasn't a problem, but the party was having a lot of interpersonal conflict, not like in real life, but their characters were, so they were bickering a lot, and they loved it. They were enjoying it. It was fine by me. It let me sit down for like a half hour and just watch them like yell at each other in character, and then everyone would be happy and have a good time. But it started taking more and more time out of the game sessions, and more, I need to go do this thing on my own because I'm so upset. It's like, all right, well, let's try and rein it back a little bit. And one idea that I came up with, which is what we ultimately ended up going with, they were approaching like a large temple for the cleric in the party, and one of her like bishops, effectively, was a man that was abusing his power and using it to manipulate the other women that were other holy women at this temple that was high up in the mountains. So he didn't really, like, there wasn't like a nearby town that could easily get in. Like, they were up and out of the way. and he was using them to assault them and rapist them, if you will. And that was one of the things that before that session started, where that topic was going to be brought up, and there was going to be evidence that he did that, and he was going to attempt to do that with the cleric. All of that I spoiled for them before the session started, being like, hey, these are kind of the story beats that I'm going for. If anybody is not okay with it, I have a plan B, and we'll go with plan B. And if any of them didn't feel comfortable divulging that to the group, I told them to like take a minute and get on their phones and pretend like they're texting me. So if one of them didn't feel comfortable, they could just text it to me and everything would be good. Everyone affirmatively agreed that they were okay with it. And I gave them the leeway to at any point be like, I'm not okay with this anymore. And we would pump the brakes and we'd move on. Fade to black, fade up from black. Assume what happened. It turned into a really good roleplay moment of like the really creepy guy trying to like force himself on the cleric, and then her having like this kind of really cool, like self-loving moment of being like, I'm not going to do that. And then the party rallying around what happened there and confronting him about it, and became a great epic like boss fight and stuff. It was a really good time. I just want to put that out there for anyone else that is looking for villains. Don't be afraid to lean into some real world horrific things. You can make it less horrific, or if your party is okay with that, just know that D&D is open to anything and everything as long as everybody involved is cool with it. I
think that's a big problem. The big problem with a lot of things like that, racism is a big one, where it's these things are thrown at the players without that understanding, without that consent.
Exactly. There's a lot of touchy subjects in the world, and some subjects that you might personally not think are touchy might be touchy to others, and that's okay if you don't realize that, but you need to be willing as a DM, especially, to be willing to change your plans on the fly and to accommodate people that are uncomfortable with a certain subject matter.
Yep. And I think that obviously Wizards of the Coast, and as also our friend, the Critical Role creation books, and all the other books we're starting to see coming out, do always, starting with in the beginning, having that section that says, hey, this could trigger some people.
Exactly.
You should definitely talk to your parties about this.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that trigger is necessarily the right term, because I feel like that has a really negative connotation associated with it.
Unfortunately, yes. But
yeah, where it could be it's like I'm drawing a blank on the word, but there's a term for like a something that brings up traumatic experiences and memories and feelings.
A trigger.
Yeah, but there's another word for it that I'm not remembering right now.
Anywho, yes.
Some horrific people that you can make some great villains. Harvey Weinstein Barbarian, hilarious. Sorry to make this a serious thing from that funny comment. A Vladimir Putin like mastermind rogue, I think would be pretty cool.
That'd be fun.
Or some other horrific.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
A Jeffrey Dahmer. A Juicy Smoulier bard.
A Stay Puft Marshmallow Man?
The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. That has a stat block. I bet I could look it up right now. There's a stat block for that.
Oh, I'd imagine. Sure. Some D&D loving creator also loves the Ghostbusters.
Ooh, the actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf. I have that stat block. That's a funny stat block. Not very good.
I've seen multiple versions of it.
The one that I have is definitely more focused on the trapping aspect of the Shia LaBeouf, the Shia LaBeouf, and the the stump leg and all that.
Just do it.
Yeah, that'd be a fun one shot. That'd be ridiculous.
Make that a low level or a horror themed one shot.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, this is the Dungeon Bros podcast. I'm Connor, and that's Sam.
I'm Sam.
We've been talking for a couple minutes. I personally, I don't know about you, Sam, and I haven't brought this up to him. I'm kind of all right if we kind of lower the amount of socials, call outs and stuff, and just talk about what's really important.
Look, I think if people are listening to us at this point, they either know where to find us, or they have a friend that's good enough to include us in their lives.
Exactly. Now, of course, you probably know us from TikTok. We've got some cool YouTube videos and YouTube exclusive shorts. Right now, we've been just doing reposts of our TikToks on YouTube, but we have some YouTube exclusive ones. I've got a cool video about the Warlock pack magic and how it sucks, and I have a better way of doing it. That is also a variant rule in the DMG. It's a good video. Look out for it. It'll come soon. We also, by the time this is posted, we're going to have up our bone armor video talking about the bone armor free spell pack that you made for the month of April. Which is a good time. We're going to Gen Con in August.
That's exciting. We are both excited for that.
Very excited. Gen Con 2022. It's from August 4th to the 7th. It's a Thursday to Sunday. We are going all 4 days. Maybe we'll go up on like Wednesday night.
Don't know. Haven't thought that far ahead.
We'll see when we get closer. But if any of you are going to Gen Con, please come and find us. We want to make some stickers to hand out to people that know us and stuff. It'll be a good time. We'll be making content. We'll have a podcast that we record like at Gen Con.
Yeah, we'll definitely do some TikToks.
Oh, so many. You'll be inundated. The week after, we might just do one post a day just to like chill out. Just like chill everyone out from it. We're very excited about that. The last bit of two. We have two. I lied.
How dare you?
I'm a big fat liar.
You are.
I took expertise in deception. I just chose not to lie in that situation. We have Hemocraft and Blood Magic, a D&D 5e compatible supplement.
Yes, this project we've been working on for the past couple months now.
For several months. It's looking like it's going to be in the range of 35 to 40 pages of actual content that's not including like our credits page and our OGL license agreement page and all of that. We're going to have some cool cover art from a guy that we found on Fiverr. We have some art that is Creative Commons that we're manipulating. It won't have a ton of art, but
it won't be a Critical Role or Wizards of the Coast level of artistic.
Oh my gosh, they're so good. Like the Critical Role artists and even the stuff that he's gotten for like the Gunslinger and stuff are great. That will not be what we have.
No, God, we are.
But the Blood Magic and Hemocraft, it's a supplement. It's got a bunch of subclasses in it related to Blood Magic, how to use Blood Magic, making sure, as we discussed previously, that your players are cool with that kind of subject matter, and because there's a lot of themes of like self-harm. Spells, feats, magic items, blood rituals, which is a mostly Sam thing.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I love that. An awesome bestiary.
Ever expanding.
We keep adding more things to it as time goes on. We're reaching the point where we're putting the final little details together. We have our friend Darren, who was on the previous podcast. He's going to do like a round of content, like gameplay, like editing for the content of it. And our friend Salem is going to review some creative writing things to make sure that we're telling a good story. We got some lore bits in there as well.
Little lore bits there.
Little lore bits. We're very excited. It'll be our first drive-through RPG release that is not free. It'll be $4.99 to buy. We want to send out a bunch of complimentary copies. So if you have a TikTok or D&D content creator that you love, we're going to send out a bunch of those. We're going to send out probably 5 or more to our fans. Most of them, over 50%, are going to go to members of our Discord server, which you can find a link in the link tree in the bio for. We have 82 people there.
82 people.
And we have people that are trying to in the looking for group channel. We got some people that are trying to put together a group. Be sure to join. Respond to that. You might be able to play in some one shots with what's his name, Tower, and DK Alexander.
DK Alexander.
They're awesome.
They're pushing hard, and if we had more time in our lives, I would definitely play with them, but I do not.
Yes, agreed. Now, we are like 15 minutes into the podcast. We should probably get to the news.
Let's jump into the news.
We should probably get into the news. First item, top item of the day. Man, Wizards of the Coast, why you got to do us like this? They announced on the D&D at Wizards D&D Twitter teased a SpellJammer release. But it was on April Fool's Day.
It was.
And they did not make it look like it was an April Fool's Day thing. They've been hinting at some SpellJammer stuff for a while. They basically just posted a video that said SpellJammer confirmed. they quickly pointed out that it was April Fool's Day when they posted it, and they got yelled at by a lot of people because they were like, "Yo, don't like tease us about this. That's fucked." While it shouldn't be taken as a serious confirmation that SpellJammer, there's a lot of people, even us, that have speculated that there's going to be a SpellJammer supplement campaign setting, because they've said before they're bringing back old 2 classic campaign settings in 2022 that have not been released. There's official rules for SpellJammer stuff in Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage. Yeah, I mean, we're getting a SpellJammer book, right? Like, we can't not be getting a SpellJammer book, and it just had to be poor timing on the Twitter post, right? Right?
I mean, the Twitter post itself, the video, if you watch it, a hamster just floats across the screen.
I mean,
for 9 seconds.
It's a good bit.
It's a good bit. But that being said, in previous podcasts, we've talked about some tweets we've seen in the previous year of what content is going to be coming up this year. And that includes a return to some old campaign settings and worlds of D&D, which with our last episode, we talked about the Heroes of Krynn and the Dragonlance book that we are expecting to come out with that UA.
Oh, the Dragonlance setting is going to be good.
And
I'm excited about that one.
SpellJammer is another one that we suspect is likely to come out.
I mean, the fans have been asking for it a lot on Twitter anytime they talk about new books and new campaign settings. I mean, with this, if this literally is just an April Fool's Day prank and they don't make that abundantly clear, like, there's going to be a lot of disappointed fans.
Yeah.
I'm not as big into SpellJammer as I would be into, like, a Dragonlance thing, or, like, going back to, like, Eberron or something like that, but neat nonetheless. Item 2, Sam.
Item 2. Here we go. A Dungeons & Dragons skirmish war game like Warhammer Warcry is coming in 2022. So it looks like a Dungeons & Dragons war game, skirmish war game, is going to come in Q3 of this year. This is based on a tweet from Nicholas Yu's Twitter account, who is a designer. In the tweet, we saw a one page which described the game, which would include battling monsters and leveling up just like you do in D&D, but the players will control a adventuring party from some of the famous factions in the D&D world. This tweet was taken down by Wizards of the Coast, but it also was retweeted by the official WizKids account.
So it's unannounced.
It's unannounced.
It's unannounced, which is a shame. But it seems like they expect to launch in Q3 2022. It would be called Dungeons & Dragons Onslaught. I'm not a big wargamer person. I've never tried it, but it seems very intimidating to me. I know you've studied the rules of Warhammer 40k.
Yeah, I've looked into Warhammer 40k a little. I've got a couple of friends who play it, and I do like the idea of collecting them. The minis are cool.
The minis are very cool, and I like the idea of like having a small squadron that you control entirely. And it's neat that they're framing it as you have your own personal adventuring party. They supposedly in this one sheet they plan on supporting it with a series of content releases, regular content releases, and a robust schedule of tournaments and in-store play that they want to schedule for it as well. This would, if this is real, this would definitely be one of those things that would get me into wargaming, because I mean, it's a very easy jump to get from D&D to the D&D skirmish game.
I like it's kind of been it's kind of a sandwich because before roleplay games, tabletop roleplay games, there was tabletop war games. Mm-hmm. And then there was tabletop roleplay games. Now there's tabletop roleplay war games.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, this sounds super cool. I'd be definitely down to, we're just at the beginning of Q2 right now.
Yeah.
But
so we're looking at a fall release.
Fall release.
Yeah. So assuming that this is true.
If this is true,
that would be big.
That would be big.
It would be very big.
We might buy it.
I would say that this would definitively be the first war game to get into this household.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of war games, if you are a fan of Black Magic Craft on YouTube, he's got a Kickstarter coming soon, I believe. A Kickstarter for his a game that he has designed, which is called Idols of Torment, which is a cool where the war of heaven and hell has gone. Sam is sick, by the way.
I'm yes.
if that hasn't been clear at any point in the last 20-ish minutes. But Idols of Torment is like a gods and devils, hells and heaven having a war and collapsing onto the plane of torment, which is just this ruined abyss of wandering souls. And you have like your idols as basically like your little party that you control, and much like in a war game, you're traveling through terrain and combating another player, as well as there's an AI system for souls to be moving around, and you have to try and collect souls and defeat your opponent and that kind of stuff. It looks really cool. The aesthetic of it is just like gothic horror, just beautiful. Love it. That might be the second skirmish game that we get in this house. When that Kickstarter releases, I will likely be a backer of that and hopefully get some cool minis. They're going swag. They have some really beautiful. One of the more recent Black Magic Craft videos, he showed off the beautiful like 3D sculpted minis that they have for it. Anyway, D&D Onslaught Q3 2022 skirmish games. We might actually get into it, and I feel like we'll have to talk about it once it's out. Right?
We might even have to play it live.
We might have to play it live. We might have to. Anyway, story 3, we've discussed previously Alta Fox and buying into Hasbro. Hasbro has added 2 new directors to their board of directors, and they plan to keep Dungeons and Dragons. They plan to keep Dungeons and Dragons as a publisher. So a quick breakdown here. As we discussed previously, Alta Fox is sort of an activist investment group that goes and buys up sections of companies and then tries to affect change within the company itself. They have a 2.5% stake in Hasbro, which, as we have learned from recent news with Elon Musk, he bought, I believe it's 9.1% of Twitter, which is a massive amount of Twitter because those are publicly available stock options. Most stock options of companies are owned by like the founders, the CEOs, the board of directors, that kind of stuff. So an outside entity like Alta Fox being able to get 2.5% of Hasbro is a very significant amount. They nominated 5 people to be on the company's board of directors earlier this year. We had a podcast where we talked a lot about that. Hasbro announced like a week ago that they were turning down the settlement offer from Alta Fox Capital. Their proposal was to add one of the 2 nominees that they had suggested, or one of the 5 nominees that they had suggested of their choice, and then Hasbro could pick one of the other options for themselves as well. Hasbro didn't do that. They went forward with Elizabeth Hamrin and Blake Yorkson. They joined the board as independent directors this last month and expanded the board of director size to 13 members. They're both executives that have previous experience in the gaming, operations, technology, and capital allocations industries.
Harmon is the chief operating officer and voice video text communication at Discord Inc.
Yeah.
And has experience working on Microsoft Xbox products, while Jorgensen previously served as chief financial officer at the video game company Electronic Arts.
So it's interesting. I don't know what the makeup of their board was previously, but these are 2 people that are definitely in the gaming industry at the very least. Maybe not the tabletop gaming industry, but in the gaming industry, which Hasbro has kind of said that they want to move into electronic gaming.
Yeah.
Which would make sense with these hires. It is a bit of a shame that they basically gave Alta Fox 2 middle fingers and a cloud of dust for their board of director proposal, and presumably their proposal to spin off Wizards of the Coast into its own entity, as we discussed previously on the podcast. Nothing surprising.
No.
But it is a new addition to the story here. Alta Fox, I don't know if they're going to keep their stake in Hasbro or try to get more and throw their weight around a little bit. I don't think it'll affect the D&D content itself at all.
No.
Or the release schedule. If anything, having some people in the gaming industry at the very least may help with the board of directors and helping to steer the ship a little bit better for the Wizards of the Coast vertical.
Mm-hmm.
So, not much to say about that.
Not much to say about that, but it is an interesting update. We
Also,
are following this closely because this is interesting to us.
I find it fascinating personally. Next, another thing that we previously discussed. There's some more info on, Sam.
Yes, the Dungeons and Dragons starter set that was accidentally leaked by Hasbro this year in a short advertisement video on YouTube.
The Dragons of Stormwreck Isle.
The Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. While blurry art was depicted, it appeared to be, as reported by, in this case, comicbook.com, the art appears to depict what appears to be Hank the Ranger.
Hank the Ranger might be one of the greatest names of any character ever.
Right? Wielding his signature magical energy bow, as well as Diana the Acrobat, who is leaping over a blue dragon's lightning breath with her extended staff in hand.
Now, you might be thinking to yourself, who the fuck are those characters, and what iconic things are they? Well, back in the 1980s, there was a Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
Yes, there was.
That featured Hank the Ranger and Diana the Acrobat. And looking at the blurry picture zoomed in, I mean, it's them.
It's them. Yeah, this cartoon originally aired in 1983 to 1985 on CBS and included popular monsters from the game, such as Beholders and Tiamat. The series only ran for 27 episodes, but is deeply impacted the D&D community, as there have been multiple different people I mean different medias reporting on the end, what happened at the end of this cartoon.
Yeah.
Ranging from Easter eggs hinting at that they just got eaten by Tiamat. I thought there was another hint in here. Anyway, and one goes on to, a comic book established that Presto would become the apprentice of the Forgotten Realms character Elmiser, while in Baldur's Gate 2 video game hinted that the characters were killed and eaten by Tiamat.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of pop culture references to this show. But some interesting things. In the year 2000, the Wizards of the Coast did a DVD box set of the cartoon, and they included a full animated series handbook that gave them breakdowns of 3.5 edition stats. But more recently, they produced a set of limited edition Magic the Gathering Secret Lairs cards, which featured characters from the show, and an unofficial ending to the cartoon was provided via a car commercial.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of references to this show from the 80s more recently. There's no way that the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle is going to include the NPCs Hank the Ranger and Diana the Acrobat, right?
We never know.
I like to imagine that this is just a fun reference on the cover.
Probably is.
But at the same time,
Hank the Ranger.
I would be totally down for a Hank the Ranger NPC included in this. That'd be amazing.
So there's a fun thing we do in our game whenever somebody gets in flanking position. One of us, usually me, yells, "Give him the flank spank."
Give him the flank spank.
And if you were flanking with Hank, then you could give him the Hank flank spank.
Wow.
Keep in mind that there's nothing
flank spank.
There is nothing officially been announced about this product yet, and this is all.
Now the closest we've gotten to an official announcement is basically a business in an investor paper that listed the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle as existing.
Yep.
So we don't know anything about it. We talked more about the starter set in a previous episode as well. I'm probably not going to get it. But if the adventure is literally about Hank the Ranger, I might have to.
We might have to.
Next, I don't know how old our viewers are. What I know is that me personally, I did not play the Atari 2600. I didn't play on DOS PCs or Amigas. But back in the 90s and 80s, these games, these consoles, if you will.
I will.
I mean, DOS PC was a PC. Anyway, Dungeons & Dragons made video game RPGs for these old consoles, such as Curse of the Azure Bonds, Champions of Krynn, and the beloved Eye of the Beholder series, which had 3 games in total. They are now available on Steam as a bundle. It's called the Dungeons & Dragons Gold Box Classic Collection, which includes just a deluge of D&D games that all originally launched starting in the 1980s, 1988, and they've spanned the worlds of Dark Sun to Ravenloft to Dragonlance they've got a lot of stuff included in the collector's edition. Or the collection includes, Eye of the Beholder 1, 2, 3, Curse of Azure Bonds, Gateway of Savage Frontier, Hills Far, Pool of Darkness, Pool of Radiance, Secret of the Silver Blaze, Treasure of the Savage Frontier, The Unlimited Adventures, Dragon Hack, Menzo Baranzan, Champions of Krynn, Death Knights of Krynn, Dark Queen of Krynn, Shattered Lands, Wake of the Ravager, Strahd's Possession, Stone Prophet, D&D Stronghold, Kingdom Simulator, Al-Qadim, The Genie's Curse. So those series are... most of them are Forgotten Realms collections. There's a Krynn series, which is Dragonlance. You've got Dark Sun. You've got Ravenloft. All of them are available right now on Steam. They had a discount for early release originally. Currently on Steam, it costs how much, Sam?
It was $60, but mine was advertising me for 33% off, so 37 something.
37 something.
So $60 for the entire bundle.
$60 for a collection of what?
A lot
20 old games all surrounding D&D. I don't have a lot of experience with older games, but I do remember we were at a bar together.
A barcade, one might call it.
A barcade where there was a couch, and on that couch, or in front of that couch. There was a retro game emulator console.
Yeah.
And they had a couple D&D games there. We were playing a D&D game for like an hour and a half.
We were not doing well because we did not know how it worked.
Yeah, we did not know how to play the game. But I'm personally a big fan of video game preservation. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of old video games that no longer exist, really. At least not in a functioning capacity. You may... If you are a bit of a weeb, you may be aware of Japanese mobile phone games where very, very popular video game series had entries on those mobile phone games. The original Kingdom Hearts Coded was on a Japanese mobile phone. There was, around the time of Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, there was a game called Final Fantasy VII Before Crisis, which followed the Turks. That was a mobile phone game, which we have managed to find and scrape together an emulator that's online that you can play that. But a lot of games like that aren't available in any capacity anymore unless you find a phone that already had it installed from the servers onto the phone, and then you buy the phone and you play it. So I always love initiatives like this where they're taking a bunch of really, really old games that are very, very difficult to come by, bringing it up to... Here's the great thing is if you can bring anything to Steam... From the moment that Steam was created going forward, if it's on Steam, it can last forever.
Yeah.
At this point. So I'm pumped about this. I think it's crazy that they even did this to begin with. And I think other companies should take cues of this. And I think it's really cool. It also includes a number of free add-ons if you buy it, including digital versions of the original manuals, hint book, adventures journals, and much more. I think this is cool.
Here it is.
For $33, the discount, or $37, whatever, for the discount. I don't see myself ever playing these games, but I might just get it anyway.
Here's my thought.
On a principled level, you know.
And this is something we've talked about before, and that's like, oh, you know, someday we would love to go full-time content development, content creation.
Oh boy.
Not anytime soon.
I mean, yeah.
But one of our avenues might be streaming, not just D&D games, but just our lives.
Just to get a fucking Nest camera set up and just have a 24/7 live, just Big Brother our lives.
Yep, pretty much. No, but and streaming video games might be an avenue of sorts, and that could be always a thing. Like we were talking about the other day, I would love to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist of the Rose.
Oh yeah.
Again, and live streaming that might be fun.
Have you tried out the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Masters game that they have?
I have it, yeah.
Yeah. You like it?
Yeah, it's fine.
I've been thinking about giving it a try. Anyway, I think it's cool. I applaud people taking their old IP, bringing it forward to the modern day. Video game preservation, tabletop gaming preservation as well.
Yeah,
we need to scan a lot of these old books and stuff. One last story, Samuel.
Last one. The popular Pathfinder adventure will be converted for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Paizo has announced plans to release one of its most popular Pathfinder adventures as a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition book. The 5e version of the Abomination Vaults, a mega dungeon crawler, will be released in November 2022, alongside a version made for Pathfinder 2nd edition. This marks the second time that Paizo has announced a conversion of one of its popular Pathfinder adventures for D&D 5e. The publisher previously announced plans to convert the Pathfinder 1e adventure Kingmaker to 5e as part of a Kickstarter campaign last year.
Abomination Vaults, originally released in 2021, it was the first of a 3-part Pathfinder adventure published by Paizo. Adventure charges players with delving into the Abomination Vaults located under the Baleful Gauntlet, a mysterious landlocked lighthouse. Landlocked lighthouse. That is some alliteration right there.
That's a lot of alliteration.
The adventure was also was designed for levels 1 to 10 Pathfinder characters, which coincidentally is similar in range to most D&D adventures that are published by Wizards of the Coast. Now, one of the lead designers at Paizo for Pathfinder is Jason Bowman. He sent out a tweet because a lot of people that are Pathfinder fans were taking to Twitter being very upset by this.
Yes, well, Pathfinder is D&D's
main competitor. Which they're not really. Paizo and Wizards of the Coast have always been fairly friendly with one another. And while Wizards of the Coast Dungeons & Dragons is clearly the bigger company between the two, they're like the Coke between Coke and Pepsi.
Yeah.
Pathfinder is still a very, very popular game. They've got a lot of amazing products. One of my most favorite things that Paizo has made, this is a bit of a sidebar, one of my favorite things that Paizo has made has been the bestiary boxes, where they have the flat pack standee minis that you can just buy like hundreds of minis of all the monsters. And there's a bunch of people, I've been very tempted to as well, that play D&D, buy the bestiary boxes and just use a lot of those creatures to represent other things.
Yeah.
Which is a great value. Pathfinder is a lot, I think in that way, a little bit easier to get into just based on the cheap standee minis. And standees are great. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan. Anyway, going back to Jason Bowman, he sent out a tweet being like, "Sigh. Pathfinder is not in trouble. Doing a 5e version of Abomination Vaults is a chance for 5e folks to check out our world and stories. Pathfinder 2nd edition is doing great, and we are excited to put out more material for it in the coming years. You just wait. We have so much more in store." I don't like people taking to Twitter with stupid internet rage for no reason. It's not a bad thing that they are making a 5e compatible version of one of their popular adventures.
People are very reactionary, and the article even points out that Pathfinder is a derivation of 3.5 with D&D 5e, and it overtook the community during 4th edition.
Yeah.
Which was a very different game compared to 3.5 and 5e.
Fourth edition is the edition of D&D that Wizards of the Coast wants us to forget.
But then, then 5th edition came along and Dungeons and Dragons pulled back forward. It's these edition wars, and people have, we've talked about before, where we're very happy to encourage anybody to go find the right role playing system for whatever they're trying to run. In which case, if you're trying to do something very like horror and low power the players, you probably don't want to do fifth Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition.
Not at all,
because it gives you so much power. Like
even at level 1, you're immensely more powerful than a lot of these systems ever let you get.
Yeah, and just in that regard, Pathfinder and D&D 5 are currently just like you said, the Coke and Pepsi. These are the main ones that people are going to grab to.
Yeah.
But for that reason, they've taken the top points at the edition wars.
Yeah.
Edition wars, not addition wars. People are not arguing over what 2 + 2 equals.
Fish.
Indeed. But yeah, people are very reactionary, and these two titles can coexist side by side, and probably will for many, many, many years.
Yeah. As they should. Pathfinder is a game that I've never played. I respect it dearly. I respect Paizo as a company. They do a lot of very consumer-friendly things. We probably should get some Pathfinder stuff in here just to have.
We have
one
copy. Yes, I was going to say we have a copy of Pathfinder Munchkin.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's the closest we've gotten.
Yeah, I have nothing against Nazareth. I was thinking about that too. Is like
there's enough overlap between them that certain aspects of one can be sort of grafted onto the other, especially with like monster stat blocks, for example,
Absolutely.
are very easily transferable between the two. Anyway, that's the news of the day.
That is the news.
That is the news of the day. We're here to talk about Call of the Netherdeep.
Call of the Netherdeep.
Now, this is the second proper Critical Role and Wizards of the Coast partnership book, the first being The Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, which is a wonderful campaign setting book. I would argue one of the best made books. It may not be the best setting, but for 5th edition, I think it's the best campaign setting book. There's a lot of content. It is very detailed. The art in it is beautiful. It is well laid out. The information is rich and useful, and chef's kiss. Mwah. Call of the Netherdeep is a D&D adventure book. It takes your characters from levels 3 to 12 that you would play at, and then at the end of the adventure you advance to level 13. A lot of these adventures start at level 3. If you have the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, what I love about this, there are 4 adventures in the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount that take you from levels 1 to 3. They're pre-written modules. They're all in the back of the book, and this book references one of the modules in the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount because the location that takes place in is close to the start of the adventure book itself. So you can pick up a copy of Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, run the...
There's the Unwelcome Spirits.
Yes, run the Unwelcome Spirits adventure, which it takes place just at the very west end of Eastern Wynandir, which is Xhorhas. And then you can move from the end of that adventure into the Call of the Netherdeep. These two books play very well together. I want that to be right out of the gate. If you have one, I would highly recommend getting the other, especially if you are a fan of running pre-written modules in general. Call of the Netherdeep is laid out well. It's written similarly to the other pre-written modules. There's a lot of detail. It's broken up into 7 core chapters of storytelling. If you are familiar with the world of Wildmount and Critical Role in general, the adventure starts you out in the city of Jigao, which they did not ever show on Critical Role. It is on the northern part of Xhorhas, where there is then a chapter of travel that leads you to Bazzoxan, which is a location that it was in Campaign 2. Then a teleportation event that takes you to Ank'Harel in Marquette, followed by some underwater stuff, and then the titular Netherdeep itself. At this point, I think we should probably say we'll be spoiling a little bit,
but we're going to try not to.
We're going to try not to, as we're not going to avoid spoiling things if we want to talk about stuff. But at the same time, we didn't read through every single bit of this adventure beat by beat. We want to keep it fresh for ourselves if we ever end up playing it. But there's a lot of really great things that we do need to talk about. The first section of the book, I think, running the adventure section,
which is called Intro, Answering the Call.
The running the adventure section, I think, is so important, and they do a really good job here. They have a flow chart that shows the level progression by chapters and what events are happening that lead to a level up. If you obviously this is advancement level up, not XP level up. Yes. There's major sections that take place underwater toward the end of this adventure, and there's an entire cheat sheet section of how to run underwater combat, and some details outlining that. There's this wonderful little element called ruidium.
Wonderful is a strong word.
I think it's wonderful.
Wondrous.
Apotheon. There we go.
I'd say wondrous. It's a good
wondrous.
Word. Wondrous.
It is wondrous by definition. The spoiler for the main villain here is a creature called Apotheon. And Apotheon has all of these chaotic emotions that infuse into the world, and the arrival of ruidium as like an element that is affecting the planet around you is kind of the call to action of this adventure in many ways. There's a lot of really cool things with ruidium. There are specific items that are infused with ruidium. There's drawbacks to it. It creates illness and disease. It gives exhaustion. It's dangerous to use, but the items and powers that it benefits you with are also very powerful. The ruidium element itself can be used as a spell component substitute, much in the same way as residuum in Critical Role, but ruidium is a bit more dangerous. You'll get points of exhaustion. You'll gain corruption from it.
Physical attribute changes.
Which will affect your role play more than anything else. The points of exhaustion are the main, like, mechanical things, and you can get rid of those, but the lingering effects are more emotional and role play heavy, which I like. It gives a mechanical detriment to using these, but not one that will last over many, many sessions.
Right.
But that's not the big draw of this book. The big draw are the rivals. They're on the cover. The rivals mechanic can be a bit hokey from time to time.
Yes. I mean, rivals are presented in, I believe, the Player's Handbook, definitely in Xanathar's Guide.
Yes, and Tasha's, I believe.
And Tasha's, but they're very small sections.
Yeah. There's also a bit of a section about developing rivals and with the character creation in Wildmount, which is the whole hero creation section in Wildmount is very good and useful for this. There's a whole section in the Call of the Netherdeep as well about how to integrate the world of Exandria from Call of the Netherdeep and Wildmount. And they don't name it, but Tal'Dorei Reborn as well into this adventure module. There was also we had an episode on Strixhaven, A Curriculum of Chaos, which had a rival system in there as well, a whole plethora of NPCs.
Whole plethora. Nowhere near as detailed as the 5 rivals presented in this book, though.
Yes, Strixhaven went for a number of them that are not going to be majorly affecting the story, whereas Call of the Netherdeep, these 5 rivals, this rival adventuring party is an adventuring party in and of itself. A quick rundown. The one that most people have talked about, the wonderful water genasi lady that has some orc tusks,
yes,
is Ao Jabe. She's a ranger. Sadly, a lot of people thought she was the daughter of Jester and Ford, not my cat, but Jester Lavore from Critical Role,
and not Ford the truck company.
Not Ford the truck company. He is built tough, but Ford Stone, for Travis and Laura's characters from Campaign 2. Which is a shame. I think that would have been a cool little sly nod they could have put in there and been fine. But at the same time,
I think the visual Easter egg is enough of a sly nod without it being overly dramatic.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I would have even been fine if it was just Ao Stone or Ao Lavore. And then that's all that the reference there was there. I think part of the reason they didn't is that Ao as a character is described as kind of a hot-headed asshole in a lot of ways. And so they may not want to paint Jester and Ford's child as such like a bitch, but at the same time, we all know what this is referencing. She is a ranger class character. The other ones are the goblin, which is Jermot Werder. He is a cleric that is very closely tied to Ao. Galsariad Ardith is a wizard, a drow wizard from the Kryn Dynasty. Also from the Kryn Dynasty, Ivan Wastewalker. No, not Ivan. Irvin Wastewalker. Which they allude to him being from Xhorhas, but he has a very German-sounding name, so it seems that might be a bit of a reference to Caleb and Essek as well. Caleb being from... Oh my god. Why am I such an idiot? The Caleb being from the Dwendalian Empire, a very German-inspired location, and then going to Xhorhas to be, oh, the cat has joined us. And she is just don't just scratch at it. Lay down.
Lay down.
Just lay down. You literally laid down. That's wonderful. But Irvin Wastewalker clearly being a reference to Caleb Widogast and his relationship with Essek, who is from the Kryn dynasty as well. Irvin Wastewalker is not a character that was given a class.
He's just a guy.
He's just a guy.
He's just a guy with...
His stat blocks are definitely the most...
simplistic.
Bland, I would even go so far as to say. And then Maggie Keen Eyes, the ogre, which kind of has just a more humanoid warrior ogre stat blocks as well. Now, you might be noticing, Sam, I am saying stat block in the plural.
Yes, I actually enjoyed this part of what they did with these.
Yes, they have 3 stat blocks for each of them that are for different tiers of play, which is wonderful. So these characters are going to be leveling up alongside your party.
Yeah.
And there's many instances where you may be asking them for help. There are instances where you're going to be at odds with them. It's clear that they are going to be coming back over and over again.
Yeah.
And you may be fighting them several times, which is just the best. The tier 3 stat blocks specifically, they even get special equipment using these ruidium items that we've alluded to. The rivals in this book, I think, are the major selling point of this adventure that's going to differentiate it from the other 5e adventures that are available. Obviously, more so, even though this is a critical role book. The rivals, I think, are the big selling point, which is why they're on the cover.
Yes.
There's a great Session 0 section as well. Not much to say there.
Yeah, the character creation. The only thing I want to point out about the character creation is that he puts in some notes in there to make sure to remind us that, hey, we are all at different levels of play, and if somebody messes up, it's cool.
Totally fine.
Totally fine.
Totally fine.
And I think there's a few other comments in there that they're just like, hey, remember to not stress about this. This is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be D&D.
A lot of those descriptive note boxes are 100% from Matt's brain to you. Yeah. There's a good section on what players know, which is a great sort of Session 0. Here's a list of information. You can print it off and give it to your players of just background info they would know about the world, weaving in the backstories into Exandria. One of my favorite things, the pronunciation guide.
The pronunciation guide
is very useful. Very, very useful. Let's get into. Do you want to get into the bestiary, or you want to get into the magic items? Those are the 2 big things we'll be talking about.
Yeah, because from there, we've just covered chapter 1. The next chapters are the adventure, which, like we said, we didn't read because we don't want to spoil it for ourselves.
Exactly. We know the overview. You go to Bazzoxan, you end up in Ank'Harel. Before Bazzoxan, there's kind of like a traveling the road, a caravan thing. You get to interact with the rivals a lot. You stop at a weird place with Horizonback Tortoise. It's a whole thing.
Yeah,
it's a whole thing. There was another D&D adventure that had like a caravan section that people really didn't like. I don't remember which one it is.
Lost Mines of Phandelver opens with a caravan section where your party is guarding a caravan on the way to Phandalin.
I don't think that's the one, because I think people like Lost Mines of Phandelver pretty well.
Yeah, because it's the original starter set.
There's another one. I don't remember, but I do know that people were comparing that to this and how this is better. Anyway, it's more interesting. You get to interact with your rivals, have a lot of role play moments, interactions, maybe some fights on the side, all of that. Then Bazzoxan, as we discussed previously. Then to Ank'Harel. There's a wonderful breakdown of Ank'Harel. If you are watching Campaign 3 at the moment, there is not a lot of information in terms of like a world map or lore or anything for Marquette. We have there's the Tal'Dorei guide, the new version of the Tal'Dorei guide. There's the Wildmount book. I look forward to a Marquette book that I would assume would come in
towards the end of campaign 3.
I don't even know, because the Wildmount book came like halfway through Wildmount. Because they even reference like this book is current up till episode like 50 something in the book. So I would expect like the end of the year, at the very least, an announcement of a Marquette book.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe not an official D&D partnership book like Wildmount is, but maybe like a third-party one on their own. There
might also be some hold-off because there's been some discourse in the community around the setting itself and how it's being represented.
Yeah, the Marquette setting is definitely Middle Eastern-inspired, Mediterranean-inspired as well.
Southeast Asia, I believe.
Southeast Asia. And there's a lot of discourse about whether or not it's okay that a group of predominantly white people are telling that story. I personally think it's fine. They're being very respectful to the inspiration. It is a fantasy setting, and I'm not going to get too much more into that.
Yeah. We're here to talk about creatures that have been infected with ruidium.
Oh my gosh.
So cool.
So the corrupted underwater creatures that they have. A good chunk of this book, 2 chapters, take place underwater. The Netherdeep and leading to the Netherdeep.
Yeah.
All the way underwater. And the picture, the art with these stat blocks is unreal.
I'd like to point out that there is multiple different types of artistic style in the book. So when it comes to the ruidium-based things, it is very lifelike with these like very bloody-looking mineral streaks, basically. But then when you get into like the adventure art, it's a little more cartoonish. It's a little more fun. It's a little more, hey, look at these 2 goblins running away with a meat pie. But then there's also just a more typical D&D art when it comes to the non-ruidium-based characters.
Yeah, it's definitely the art style there is showing like a juxtaposition of this like world that exists is being invaded by and darkened by the Apotheon and the evil that it is creating into the world. The corrupted creatures are just gnarly. So the shark is cool. There's like a flumph. There's a light devourer.
There's an aboleth.
A corrupted aboleth. The aboleth itself is already just like a crazy monster to begin with. Very, very mental. Like aboleth will fuck with you.
Super alien, squid-like with a giant maw of teeth, and now you add on top of it that it thinks that because of the corruption, it thinks that it is carrying Abeloth himself.
Yeah.
And has that Apotheon, thank you. Has carrying Apotheon himself and is ready to aggress because of that.
It's cool shit. There's a little bit of overlap between the Call of the Netherdeep and Wildmount. There's a Horizonback Tortoise, Stat Block, Moorbounders, Gloomstalker, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of NPCs, like humanoid people,
some Cobalt Soul members.
Cobalt Soul, some like Arcane Scholars. There's a take on cultists as well. All the stat blocks, all the humanoid stat blocks, fairly interesting, useful, more unique than your sort of standard NPC stat blocks that you would get in a monster manual style thing. Overall, solid bestiary.
Solid bestiary.
Solid bestiary. I'm probably going to reference some of these the more humanoid NPCs for my own campaigns and my own purposes.
Even the Ruidium corrupted ones would be pretty fun to throw in. You know, it obviously doesn't have to be from a Pantheon. It could be some other sort of corruption in your world. I feel like every D&D world has a source of like viral corruption.
Yeah, mine is Star Scourge.
Star Scourge.
Yours, I assume, is Conduction.
Yeah, that's
to an extent.
That's a drug-based
or whatever the glom is.
He's New Black.
We'll get into that. Anyway, the bestiary is the bestiary. The thing that your players are probably going to care most about are the magic items. And in the very first chapter, there's like this competition that is a mostly for fun thing.
Yeah.
And there are medals that get handed out that are common magic items that provide small buffs and are interesting and unique. I love that. There's a I think like 9 of them,
Yes.
7 to 9 of them.
One
7.
for each competition.
There's 7 of them,
7
exactly.
of them.
And
the Medals of Merit.
the Medals of Merit. If your characters win, if any of your players win whatever that challenge is, then you can award them this magic item as a representation of that success, which is neat.
Medal of Meat Pie Eating is one.
Medal of Meat Pie Eating. That's something. Along the lines of the Medals of Merit, there are Fragments of Suffering.
Kind of the opposite.
Kind of the opposite. These take place in chapter 6. I won't spoil why. The fragments are essentially small boons that give a buff, and in exchange, there's a detriment associated with them. There's 9 of them. Pretty much your characters are going to have to find them to progress the story. Some of them, at least, to progress to the next chapter. Mm-hmm. But that mentality of, for one, the mentality of here's a benefit with a drawback is at the core of our Blood Magic and Hemocraft pack, which will be available for $4.99 on Drive-Thru RPG. But in general, the idea of boons is something that is relatively unexplored in D&D 5e. There's a boons section in the DMG, but it hasn't really been expanded on in any meaningful way.
A lot of them are very high-level sort of things. And yeah, just, I don't know, I think that maybe they are going in a direction of, instead of boons, we're going to use the idea of feats, or we're going to reward feats, or we're going to use the idea of magic items that don't require things like that. Yeah, I think I can imagine, this is a sidebar entirely as well, yes, in the eventual 5.5 refresh that they're going to do, so-called 5.5. I wouldn't be surprised if feats have a split where there are trained/gifted feats versus innate feats. Mm-hmm. Your innate feats being things like your racial feats from Xanathar's, like touched from, like your Fey touched, your shadow touched from Tasha's, and then you're trained, or even like certain things like Magic Initiate or Mage Slayer, your background, you hunt mage, like that kind of stuff. And then more of your trained/gifted feats can be things along the lines of like, you could train for like Great Weapon Master or Sharpshooter, or to become more tough, or be granted like Eldritch Adept, mm-hmm, or and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'd be okay with that. Sidebar over. Sidebar. Oh, sidebar over. There's a vestige of divergence. There is in this magic item list. The Jewel of the three prayers. Jewel of the three prayers. If you don't know what a vestige is, it is essentially a magic item style that was developed by Matt Mercer. It's also not terribly original, but cool nonetheless. First premiered in the original Tal'Dorei guide, later in Wildmount, where it became an official D&D thing, and then Tal'Dorei Reborn as well. It is a magic item that you get, and then as your character progresses in their story, in their advancement as an individual, the magic item grows in power with it. In general, the Jewel of the Three Prayers is going to give an AC boof. An AC boof. It's going to give an AC boof. It's going to give an AC boost of +1, +2, +3 at the Dormant, Awakened, and Exalted phases, which are the same across all of the Vestiges of Divergence. It has charges that let you do things like cast Invisibility. Later, you can allow people to re-roll failed saving throws as a reaction. End conditions on yourself. You can cause teleportation, short-range teleportation near you with your allies that create like bursts of light. It's fascinating. But like your more basic things, your AC boost, it gives you better maneuverability and breathing underwater. There's a theme of a lot of these magic items giving you underwater breathing, swimming speeds, that kind of stuff, because of the section of the book that takes place underwater, most of it. As far as the vestiges go, I would say it's one of the more unique ones. I don't know if I would classify it as particularly powerful compared to some of the other options. It is also very thematic. It's very to this adventure. It is very. It's 100% tied to the Call of the Netherdeep itself. I don't know where it shows up, or if your players can get it, or in what situation it arises in the story at all, because we haven't read it for that purpose. I did see it, but they do get it rather early on. Oh, well, there you go. My personal favorite section are
the ruidium items.
The ruidium's items are very cool.
They're very, very cool. There's a ruidium ring, there's armor, shield, and a weapon. The ruidium provides them all with the same capability to breathe underwater and gain a swimming speed. The armor and the shield as well give resistance to psychic damage, which is one of the drawbacks of ruidium. You take psychic damage whenever you gain or lose a level of exhaustion when you are corrupted by ruidium. If you wield these weapons, you are more likely than not corrupted by ruidium.
Yeah. That's for this reason.
Yes. They provide special powers in and of themselves. Pretty gnarly powers.
Yeah.
Very powerful. And there's a neat little section on if certain things happen in the adventure and ruidium is destroyed, they become regular magic items. The ring of free action, +1 armor, +2 shield, +2 weapon. I love these items. I love that idea of items that are more powerful than they should be with like a little bit of a drawback, but they may not stay that way forever because they're corrupted a bit.
Yeah. I also, I like them. I do think it might be hard to implement them in a campaign where this isn't already kind of the idea. So like if you're just in a normal campaign and it's like, oh, you know, +1, +2, +3 swords are just available for a certain cost. Well,
yeah.
Why might I take the ruidium +1 sword, even though it has this cool effect, but if every time I use the effect, it's going to give me a possible detriment. Yeah. As opposed to in this, I would definitely like full on, like I would probably prep my players with telling them, like if I was running this, prep my players by telling them, hey, most other magic items aren't going to be super available to you. We're probably going to stick to what's in here and maybe some other things.
Some pretty basic stuff.
Some pretty basic stuff.
Your bags of holding, your ring of protection, that kind of stuff.
But but the idea is definitely you want these, like there are going to be cool items down the road, but they, you know, will affect you. Yeah. I would definitely prep them with that. Kind of in the same way that I assume you looked at you said they gave a underwater combat little chart. Yes. Underwater combat kind of sucks most of the time. Yes. There's a lot of disadvantage.
That's why they gave away a lot of, that's why you're getting underwater breathing and swimming speeds just left and right. Yeah. I personally would forego the disadvantage on attacks and stuff.
That's what I was going to say.
The biggest detriment is if you had someone using like a crossbow or a longbow or something, limiting it to the short range distance, but not imposing disadvantage.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
Yeah, with underwater combat being, you can only use certain weapons not at disadvantage, or you can only use a short range on a crossbow. Yeah. That kind of sucks to play. Like, I rolled a really good, but it's at disadvantage always. Yeah. So if I wanted to keep with those, I would encourage the players to be like, hey, you should always take tridents.
Yeah, trident's good. Their sailor background would be good. There's a couple subclasses that are more nautical themed that are good. For the majority of the adventure, they're not going to be super useful because there is a lot that takes place in cities and above ground. So I wouldn't build a character with the expectation that this character is going to end up underwater eventually. Yeah. Because you're going to be like level 9, 10 before that happens. Yeah. Anyway, those are the overview of the items. There's things like the teleportation tablet and some like the earring, the message earring, like some little stuff that
bubble of breathing, things we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
From
Critical Role. There's some lovely concept art in the back. There's a map. We made a little funny TikTok about ripping the map out of the book,
and then we didn't do anything with the map.
Yeah, we don't have a frame yet, so it'll go up. It's a beautiful map of Ank'Harel.
It's very nice.
It's very, very nice. Really cool. Final thoughts. Let's do. How would you run this campaign if you were to do it?
If I were to run this campaign, I think. Sorry, I got distracted by the fact that the book gets corrupted as you go along.
Oh my gosh, that is one of the coolest things about this book is the pages as you progress from page 1 all the way to the end. There's these little ruidium streaks that are in the bottom corners, and then the further you go, the bigger they get throughout the book. So as the adventure progresses and you get closer to the big bad, the corruption around the edges of the book itself get bigger and redder. It's really cool. Highly recommend looking at that.
I would probably just start right at the beginning of the book. Yeah. I would look for a group of players I'm used to. just because a lot of the instances of the cool things happening are going to be very RP heavy.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily want to drive somebody who's new and uncomfortable into that slot. If I know somebody, if somebody wants to, I'm not going to limit it obviously to anybody but my friends. But yeah, I'd probably just run this start to back.
Yeah. I personally, I love the idea of tethering this with Wildmount. So the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. They reference one of the modules that's at the back of Wildmount that takes you from levels 1 to 3. I would like to run one of those. Get everyone together, use the Heroes Chronicle feature in Wildmount to help create the characters, tie it in with Exandria really tightly. Give a lot, I think that integration with Exandria, the options that you get in Wildmount are very, very critical to making this all work, at least to the fullest extent. I also wouldn't mind running one of the adventures that they didn't suggest. They're in different parts of Wildmount, and creating a small filler arc to travel from one to the next. I'd be okay with that. You also get to go to Jigao and Jigao and Bazzoxan, which both have sections in Wildmount that have mid-tier and low-tier adventure hooks in them as little side quests that you can do during this adventure if you wanted to make a more fleshed out campaign. There's also a lot of more detailed descriptions of the location and maps and stuff in Wildmount itself, as well as a plethora of monster options, magic items, and some NPC inspiration for some of these locations for side quests and other enriching the things that are in Call of the Netherdeep. You don't need any of that. No. But me being me, I would pull all of the Critical Role books and be like, how can I implement as much of this stuff as possible? Pulling the Tal'Dorei Reborn off the shelf, pulling the Call of the Netherdeep, the Wildmount, getting Tasha's and Xanathar's and the PHB on the table and be like, all right, we're going to spend 3 hours making our characters in session 0 and just weaving this web of deliciousness, Right.
Opposite end. If you're going to create a character, knowing, let's say you get to know everything that's in the first chapter, the background and what kind of character are you creating for this to play as a player?
As a player. I would probably want to be something like an Echo Knight.
Okay.
From Wildmount. Or I would want to take one of the probably an Echo Knight. Maybe a riff on one of the Wildmount player characters from Campaign 2. someone inconsequential from one of their playing Luke.
Sure. Okay.
Which would be Veth's child, Luke, an adult version of Luke that's an arcane trickster. Or maybe a blade singer, because he would be trained by Caleb in summer camps for learning how to do magic, but also in combat from his mother and that kind of stuff. Or the literal child of Jester and Ford, or one of Caduceus's siblings, more younger siblings. Yeah, that's probably how I would want to go about it. Tie something into the Kryn dynasty, so your Eldritch Knight using Dunamancy and that kind of stuff, or making a play on a younger, lesser important character from Campaign 2.
Gotcha.
Would be how I would go about it. What about you?
I would probably go. I think it would either be so. Obviously, the character of Apatheon is an ancient hero, and so I would either do a paladin who looks up to this ancient hero and wants to be like him, or possibly go with I don't know, just a warlock in this sort of scenario feels like a good idea.
An Apatheon warlock.
Ooh,
the along the lines of the paladin, there's Matt's Oath of the Open Seas paladin, which would be, for one, useful for the underwater stuff, as well as if you're trying to obviously a Pantheon is in the Netherdeep, which is like this underwater alternate dimension thing. So the themes there would jive well. There's also the Pact of... Oh, the tentacle one from Tasha's.
Oh, Pact of the Fathomless.
Yes, the Fathomless Warlock from Tasha's would work really well.
I think
here.
that, now that I think about it, I think I might go with the Pact of the Fathomless.
That would be a great...
That'd be fun.
That'd be really good. That'd be really good. You know, Sam, in our core group that we play with, you, me, Salem, Darren, you run a game.
I run a game.
Darren runs a game.
Darren runs a game.
I might run this.
You might run that?
I could easily be convinced to run Call of the Netherdeep / Wildmount with you guys. We can talk about that off mic in the future. But final thoughts, Call of Netherdeep.
So we haven't really reviewed an adventure module before, and kind of purposefully.
Yeah. I don't like spoiling it for people. At least like the details of the story. Like I'll give you the overview of what happens in Call of the Netherdeep. Like you go here, you go there, you're fighting this bad guy, you go to this underwater thing, and you have to defeat the bad guy. Like that's just D&D.
Yeah. Beyond that, we run homebrew games very much. I've tried to run adventure modules before, and I have a difficult time doing it. Yeah. That being said, I think this is very well put together, and I would probably jump at the chance to either run or play in this.
Now, I have one major homebrew campaign that I run. I have also done one of the adventure modules in Wildmount for a lot of new players that we are friends with that took us from levels 1 to 3, and I started to homebrew beyond, but that kind of fell apart. It was too big of a group. And there was too little interest in D&D. Like, they were interested and happy to play, but
they wanted to hang out mostly.
They just wanted to hang out mostly.
One guy's having a kid now, and his wife was also in the group. Yeah. Kids, they ruin everything.
They really do.
Hot take.
That's a very lukewarm take.
Lukewarm take.
Lukewarm takes.
Here on the Dungeon Bros, we do mostly lukewarm takes.
Mostly lukewarm. But at the end of the day, I like this. I could be very easily convinced to run the Call of the Netherdeep starting in Wildmount at level 1.
At level 1.
And I would very much look forward to a 2.5 hour hangout with the boys. Or the girls.
Hashtag the boys.
Or the girls. One of my coworkers and my good friend Michaela is a big fan of Critical Role now. I got her into it at the end of Campaign 2, like right when Campaign 3 was starting, and she is fucking hooked on Campaign 3. So I could totally see her, who's also fairly new to D&D, I could see her being into this as well, playing in this.
All right.
That being said, it is the time of the episode. We're okay. We didn't do it this episode. I'm trying to be better about incorporating the questions and comments from the TikTok Live during the episode. I forgot to do that this time.
That's okay. I think...
So let's scroll. Give me some good ones from the TikTok Live.
All right, from the TikTok Live. Blue Tempest 6 says something, and I think is in Galactic Basic.
What? I don't even want to begin deciphering that.
So we're not going to. And that's all. That's all from the Q&A.
That's all.
We didn't put out a thing that said...
we didn't. We didn't put out our comment.
And I'm the only person in the chat right now.
Well, it'd be like that.
Well, we do have a question from the Discord.
Yes, we have a Discord server. As we mentioned earlier, it is 82 strong and growing. This one is from Shadow Figure in the Discord. Have you ever had a bag of beans or likewise chaotic magic item change the entire dynamic of how you thought the session would go? If so, how did it turn out?
So yes, actually, we have.
Well, in 2 campaigns that we've played in, there's been the bottles of wine that have been somewhat chaotic, but not changed the makeup of the session, I would say.
No. We did have in the one I run for you and Darren, Salem, and Jacob, we had a bag of beans come up.
Yeah, we did.
We do random rolls on tables in that one from the DMG for loot distribution.
Yeah.
And we had a bag of beans come up. And the way that group plays is, hey, we have a chaotic item. Like a bag of beans.
We use it immediately. Almost immediately.
We sit down on the beach with a fire and we use it immediately.
Yep. So we popped up in the bag of beans. We grew a tree, I believe.
No, that can't.
Ooh, there were
was
horse
from the feather token. It
The
was
feather token. We had horses.
Horses. It was what it was you planted it and a bunch of small pink frogs started hopping around,
Yeah.
and if you touched them they turned into another animal.
Which was a horse.
One of them was a horse, yes.
One of them was
there
a
was
horse.
some goats. I believe there was a tiger at one point.
They disappeared as well.
They disappear after
which
a
was a damn travesty. But these bottles of wine were ethereal wine.
Yes.
And each of them had a small, what was it, a D4 table?
D4 table.
And you would get effects that ranged from resistance to radiant damage, learning a wizard cantrip, getting a boost to blah, 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 to your hair now feels like cashmere, or your skin is translucent, or your legs become frog legs. Very fucked, sir. We had enough that we could each get 3 rolls on these tables. My wizard Lucian got the cashmere hair, so his hair is luxurious now. He also got really, really hairy.
Yep.
Shaved that. And
What was the last one?
we got 4 rolls because one of them was I aged several years.
That's right.
So he went from like late 20s to early 30s instantly. Hair of cashmere, overgrown hair on like his back and chest and stuff that I got one of the other characters to shave for me. And the 4th one was I became more attractive.
That was from the cashmere hair.
That was the cashmere hair. Oh,
Yeah,
that was the
'cause there are
cashmere
4
hair.
of you, 12 charges, it's 3 per.
Yes. So the cashmere hair, I gave myself a +3 to my sex appeal bonus.
Yes.
Which means his total sex appeal was +3. His sex appeal save DC is now 11.
11. But yeah, that's a homebrew item I've made a long time ago. And we might add that to a future pack.
We should.
We should.
We should add that to a pack.
well-
Darren also had gave it to us for his campaign.
Yeah.
It was a bit less chaotic
Yeah. Yeah, he allowed lesser restorations
to fix it.
I did not.
Did not. As far as the campaign that I've run, nothing too chaotic because I didn't want anything too chaotic. I may have talked about this on the podcast, I don't know, but the most chaotic thing that happened wasn't something that I introduced. It was our drow rogue, Hannah. She called Liz Wizen, whatever. Her name is Hannah. She goes to a brothel, not to partake, to get a job for one, which is hilarious in and of itself. Obviously, I'm not doing that, so I'm like, all right, we'll hire you as a janitor to clean up after the messes that are made. And she starts to see some of the prostitutes and like feels bad for them and doesn't like her job, but doesn't want to subjugate them to like cleaning up all this disgusting mess. So she uses a love potion that I gave her, which, by the way, the love potion, probably the chaotic item that I shouldn't have given them in the first place, but I digress. Used a love potion on the magic shopkeeper, the magic item shopkeeper, to coerce him into signing a contract where he would create a magic set of broom and mop to deliver to the brothel to clean up all of the fluids.
The juices.
The juices. That was the closest I've had to complete chaos.
Could have been a Fantasia moment.
It kind of was a little bit. They haven't been back since that contract was signed, so they didn't see the items be created, delivered, used, or the aftermath of the love potion failing or wearing off and the contract itself. But that'll be fun to revisit in probably a couple years.
Fabulous.
Yeah, we don't get to games all that often anymore,
I
which is a
understand.
shame.
Yeah.
My work schedule sucks.
One of my long running campaigns recently just kind of got back to the point where we're going to start running again because one of the people just finished grad school, and one of the other guys, his baby is now sleeping through the night because it's 2 years old.
That's wonderful.
Right.
It's good. That's really good. At this point,
I think that's what we got.
that's about all that we got. Again, we'll run through Twitter, YouTube, TikTok. Follow us there.
Join the Discord.
Join the Discord. 82 people in there.
Strong.
80 not including us.
Yeah.
Go to DriveThruRPG, link in our link trees on our social medias, not on the podcast services around the globe.
Nope.
Apple, Google, Spotify, Plex, Pandora, microwave ovens. etc., etc., and so on.
etc.
But on DriveThruRPG, we've got a bunch of free homebrew. The April pack, the Bone Armor pack. You can check out a breakdown video of it on the YouTubes currently. This is a pack of Sam's designs, some cool necromancy spells. At the beginning of May, we're going to be releasing the Blood Magic and Hemocraft pack by us for $4.99. That is going to be very chunky, like 35 to 40 pages of actual content in addition to legal disclaimers and credit pages and cover art and all that.
And so not this next podcast, but the one after it, the first podcast of May, we will be discussing that here.
Yes, the first podcast of May is going to be our talk about our Blood Magic pack, because I'm sure we got a lot to say.
We got a lot to say.
And if you don't want to buy it, you can just listen to the podcast and write down everything we say and try and just put it together.
In which case, you're probably going to have to listen to the podcast multiple times.
Probably. It'll help our watch time and retention, for sure.
Maybe send it to your best friend and have them double check your notes.
Yes.
And have them send it to their best friend to do the same.
While you do that as well, first thing you should do is just write a transcript of everything, and then you can upload it to the podcast.
Yes.
On YouTube as well, which would be very helpful. And then do that for every other one that we do for time immemorial.
Yes. We have started our time capsule.
We have?
We have. Didn't I tell you?
No.
Oh, we've started our time capsule.
Shit.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah, the Moon and I worked on that last week.
Oh, that's why. I probably haven't gotten the email yet.
You know, you
He's
were
a bit
actually
slow.
like working this past week. I've been sick. That's why I've had to hang out with the Moon.
I get that. I mean, we all got to take our lumps.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Gen Con. If you go to Gen Con in August 4th to 7th, we are going to be there. Please come say hello. If you're going to be there, we will give you a sticker and a hug. Maybe a high five.
You can take pictures with us if you want.
If you want. That would be weird. I don't know how I would react to that, but that'd be out of this world.
That'd be crazy. We would love you.
Yes. Big kiss. Virtual kiss. Not real kiss. Virtual kiss.
Virtual kiss.
You can give a virtual kiss to the cute Jester. She's curled up right now. I kind of want to just vamp for a couple, like, tens of more minutes so that she can sleep peacefully. Because the moment we get up, she's going to be upset.
She's going to be upset. We could do that. I mean, we got 4 people in the chat right now.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
All right. Well, in the meantime...